Names in the news. This came out of nowhere. I don't understand it. Bill Belichick interviewed at the University of North Carolina on Wednesday for their head coaching job. I was of the opinion that North Carolina was kind of brainstorming with him to talk to him about how you set up an NFL-type front office operation for your football programs, because now the player personnel acquisition is so different in college football with the NIL and the transfer portal. You really need administrative people with experience in player personnel and in business to run it. That's what I thought that meeting was all about in Chapel Hill. He interviewed for the job. That's far-fetched. I mean, he's been out of college football for more than 25 years. He's been in the NFL for 24. Him walking in the door at Chapel Hill, it's such a different environment, such a different world. I think that's really a bridge too far for North Carolina. Second one is the shocker at UCLA. They fired Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator, assistant head coach, 9 months on the job, got blown out. UCLA was just pathetic on offense during the course of the whole season. The aftermath of what we hear from players, the playbook was too complicated, too much verbiage. The learning curve was too steep. And by the way, they didn't have a lot of great offensive players, and they turned the football over a lot. So Bieniemy's gone. So, this guy never got a head coaching job. He got let go in Washington after just 1 year, and now this happens to him at UCLA. Maybe he winds up in Kansas City next season doing things again. I'm just kind of really surprised at that. The third picture is Lewis Hamilton, legendary Formula One racer. Final race of the season is Sunday in Abu Dhabi. Lewis Hamilton's final race with Team Mercedes is Sunday. He openly admitted that when he announced he was going to Ferrari at the beginning of the season, he could have never imagined the unrest that it would have created with Team Mercedes. He had a miserable season. He's had a miserable couple of years. End of the season, he finally won 2 races. He had totally dominated until Red Bull and Max Verstappen grabbed the sport by the throat and owned it. And he got very frustrated with everything that was happening in Mercedes. He finally admitted today, before qualifying, that he could have never imagined the ill will of his business decision would have created with a team for the entire season. But he's leaving, and he leaves with all types of records, but he's exiting Mercedes after this weekend. And the last one is J.J. Redick, head coach, L.A. Lakers. You know the Lakers with the 2 superstars and the flawed roster and the worst defense in the league right now. The Lakers in the last 2 weeks have lost by 25, 27, 29, and 41. They lost by 41 points in Miami the other night. They play in Atlanta tonight. Can you believe not one shred of defense for the Lakers? Seems to be no pride. It's almost as if the players have quit listening to him because their shots are not going in. At the other end of the floor, nothing at all. Redick lost his mind in the postgame press conference after Miami. He just looked into the camera and said, I'm telling the players, you own this. The 41-point loss. It's not on me. You're the ones on the court at both ends of the court. You're not subscribed to what we're doing. You need to own this. So we'll see what happens in Atlanta tonight, whether they respond to him or whether this is the beginning of a cascade of problems. So, John, Belichick and the Atlantic Coast Conference, you kidding me? Go ahead, talk about those 4 names.
Yeah, well, Belichick going to college football is really weird. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually surprised that he is still such an attractive commodity in the NFL today, even because without Brady, he wasn't much, and all due respect, he's not a spring chicken either. So I'm surprised that he's out there. Maybe he what do you think of him as in the broadcast booth? Because he's in the studio, he does some pretty good analysis.
I think he's done better as a broadcaster than I would have ever imagined, and I enjoyed interacting with him. And I interviewed him 3 times, and some of the conversations were really intellectual and erudite. He wouldn't tell you about his left tackle. He didn't want to talk about game plans, but he'd talk about history and philosophy of football and why you do certain things you do. Yeah. I was fascinated by the guy. What are your thoughts on what's happened to Bieniemy?
That was weird because I remember when he got recruited there and with Deshaun Foster, and we thought, hey, here's a legit guy, a proven guy, credibility guy, and he's a big talker. He'll motivate the college students. We thought it was a perfect fit. And to see him kicked out in less than a year is just unbelievable. This guy was like NFL head coaching material just a few years ago.
Yeah, past tense, not right now. And he showed up with NFL credentials and an NFL playbook, and it didn't work in college football. And that's happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Just like going the other way. College guys going to the NFL and they get overwhelmed by it. They can't do it either.
Well, yeah. So I remember we talked about Deion Sanders. I mean, that'll work in college, but I don't know if that's going to work with the pros. The other one, Lewis Hamilton. What's interesting is this is something that's just interesting to adapt to as an American, kind of embracing F1, is I'll see women in Europe really talk about Lewis Hamilton, and how he's a big star. And it's, a little bit of the sex appeal to the whole thing, but it's just how F1 has reached a lot of people that you would normally not think to be sports fans.
Demographics very different.
Yes, it is. And so I think it's great that Hamilton's back in the news, because he was kind of pushed aside there for like about a year or two. So he's back and thriving, and I'm happy for him.
Just get it correct. It's Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, that's right.
The Queen anointed him Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And your Lakers?
This is comical, because you've got LeBron, who's been struggling hitting 3-point shots. You look like the whole organization kind of bent its back to cater to LeBron, to hire his buddy JJ Redick, to draft his son in the second round and have him play. I don't even know, is Bronny even playing in the G League anymore?
No, he's hurt.
Well, okay. So the whole thing is just turning into a disaster, and it seems like these players are saying, hey, man, I got paid. I got my contract. I opted back in. They wouldn't have been opted. They wouldn't have been able to get a deal if they could, but they could opt in. They're getting paid. And, man, I don't want to play defense. I want to play like it's the All-Star game.
And to Jeannie Buss, nice job. Look what you turned your father's legendary flagship franchise into.
Oh, the whole thing is a freaking disaster. And I think there's a lot to be said, is that LeBron unquestionably is great talent, potentially good leadership, but it's just everything around him that happens either by direct or indirect consequence. It just turns it into a shitstorm. And here we are.
His galaxy has impacted the franchise.
Yes.
Very much so. Okay, this podcast is about to become your podcast.